Hello, Kemal. It's good to see you. How are you?
Hi, thank you. How are you?
I'm good as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. Before I give the word to you to introduce yourself, I would shortly like to say it's a great privilege and honor for me to have you here. Mr. Kemal İslamoğlu is one of the most known and famous trainers in Turkey, and he's also working internationally. But before me talking about you, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? Can you please shortly introduce yourself?
Oh, how long do we have? I have a big ego, you see.
Make it as small as possible, please.
Okay, so let's be productive. I was born and raised in Istanbul, and I'm an engineer by discipline, but I have never worked as an engineer because I was working for Mercedes in my summer work, and I was fired from my summer work as an engineering student, and that day has changed my life because I said to myself, whatever you do, you need to sell. So instead of being in production, I would rather be working in sales. So throughout my career, and still today, I call myself as a salesman because I'm selling myself. I'm selling ideas. So since then, uh, I have always put sales as a focus in my career. So I worked in sales departments, and one day I had a French manager. One day he caught me over a copy machine, and he said, "You are going to be in charge of trainings as well." Probably I was the closest person. I mean, nothing special there. So he was in kind of looking for a resource. So I was the first person he contacted. So he pushed me from my back to be a trainer, and I enjoyed it. Fortunately, so I was working for Michelin Tires in Turkey. Then I started to do trainings in and around. I went to Egypt. I went to India, Japan, Canada, US for trainings, England, France. So I give and take trainings there. And I was not able to provide trainings for my staff in Turkey because I was traveling around a lot. Um, and I was buying trainings, from local resources for my team. And then end of 99, I wanted to pursue my own thing, and I resigned from business world to do my own thing. And then I was approached by then my suppliers. They said to me, why don't we work together? I say, well, maybe in the weekends I can, do trainings for you. Then since from 2000, this kind of become my career. So in the last 20 years, I work as a training consultant, mainly in Turkey and all over the world.
Yes, and for the people who don't know Kemal İslamoğlu, again, as I said, he's one of the most well-known trainers, speakers in Turkey. So once again, it's an honor to have you. And today,
Thank you.
our topic is productivity, and obviously you're a very productive person, but we'll get to that. But let's set the term straight first. What does productivity, this word, mean for you?
Well, if you ask the engineer in me, I mean, I can come up with a very rigid and very logical answers. I'm sure in this training you will talk about those things, techniques and stuff. Productivity is the ratio of your output compared to your input. So this is what productivity is all about on the book, let's say. But I would, as a trainer, through my experience, what I have kind of distilled over the years, productivity means nothing if you do not put the emotions in context. So productivity can be very shitty thing, can be very boring thing if your emotions are not counted. So I certainly bring in the emotions. So what I mean by productivity is creating work while you are in flow. So I would certainly bring in emotions into it, because many people produce stuff, produce results, but unfortunately they are usually in anxiety or in depression. So I think they would be better off if they didn't produce at all. So I wouldn't call that productivity.
Yeah, I think that's more efficiency, and these two terms make it very distinguishable. In the terms productivity, I guess it also has a more human element into it, as you said, because being in the flow, taking time for yourself, thinking about the long run, I think these are important points as well. And what about you, Kemal? As a very well-known trainer, I'm sure hundreds of people regard you as productive. But in that matter, I guess self-awareness is also very important. So I want to ask you, do you consider yourself a productive person?
Well, if I look at myself in a perspective of 30 years, I certainly am. But on daily basis, I can be my worst critic for different stuff. But if I look at it in over 30 years, I think I am productive. I think I had a great outputs as far as I'm concerned, and that really made me very happy. But when I was inside of them, it wasn't very easy, obviously. But somehow I learned a lot of stuff, and I am trying today to copy what I have learned and try to avoid what I really hated. So that's how I would put it.
Are you still sometimes harsh to yourself, like a lot of people are, saying, "Ah, stupid Kemal, you didn't wake up early enough," or stupid?
Well, I have been very harsh over the years, and well, I talk about these stories in my trainings. I would say if I wasn't trained, let's say, if I didn't aware of myself, and if I didn't change certain stuff, if I was to tell maybe 15 times a day, probably I'm doing it about once a week, let's say. I can still be harsh on myself, but maybe just once a week.
I like this self-whipping gesture. Like a
Exactly.
religious ritual. All right. And how are you productive then? By how, I'm asking more about, are there some methodologies or tools that you use that could be also a light for people who are looking for such tools or methodologies that they can benefit from?
Sure. I mean, there are many stuff. First of all, the number one thing I do, I meditate. Every evening and every morning I meditate, and every time in between, when I drive or when I have 5 minutes, I can concentrate on my breath. I mean, meditation is not something going into a magical place. It is knowing where you are, remembering who you are, remembering and being connected with your breath. I mean, I can do it, and anybody can do it anytime. So that really helps me to remember who I am, what I am for, and what I'm about to accomplish. So that really boosts my productivity, I would say. So that is number one. One thing is, many techniques, and I'm not underestimating them. They are very important. I'm sure your training will talk about them. There are many techniques and tools on how to be productive and what can be done, what techniques can be used. What's and hows are much easier to find, when you look for them. My number one thing is always why. Why do I have to do this? So whenever I have a checklist, let's say, or to-do list, of course, every time you need to start with a checklist, but on that checklist, there are certain stuff I don't do at all because I cannot find enough why. I cannot find enough leverage to do them. So I don't spend my time there. So I always start with why. And that why is very much related with my own life purpose. So anything that is serving me, serving my life purpose, I can accomplish. I can be very productive. That if they are not serving my life purpose, either they wait until there is a kind of a window that they can fit into my purpose, or they can just be dropped. That's how I approach it.
Yes, in the training that I'm also going to put, I also speak about Simon Sinek's Start With Why, which resonates a lot with what you say.
Exactly.
And
so
finally,
that's why I just remembered. Don't forget your question. But you know me. If I start speaking, I will not be able to stop. So, so your why is very much related with your identity. And of course, we all have different identities. I mean, people usually do not have that much identity until they are 25. I mean, after 25, between 25 and 60 years old, we have so many identities. So whatever I do, it has to be related 1, 2, or 3 of my identities and my life purpose, so I can accomplish a lot.
And one final question, since we're going to keep this rather short. If person A, X, would come to you, knowing you as a productive person, and asks you, Kemal, I want to be productive. I have the willingness to do so, but I have no idea where to start. And I don't feel like I'm reaching my potential like this. Tell me how. What would you say?
I would take him in a time machine, and I would take him, let's say, 100 years after, and take him to his grave. And I would ask him, what do you want to be written on your gravestone? How do you want to be remembered? Because if you start from there, because that means that is your life purpose. Okay, what do you want others, for your grandchildren, or people who have never met you? How do you want to be known by them? So that is your life purpose, and remember that, and then start serving for that. Start doing stuff for that. I mean, it can be mega stuff, it can be very little stuff. I mean, for example, I have thought about writing a book for nearly 10 years. It took me 3 years to complete it, and it took me 2 years to give others to read it. Why it took so long? Because of the same stuff, because I wasn't very clear with my life purpose. But when I was clear, I start doing stuff. I start to become more and more productive. So that's where I would start from, with the time machine.
The graveyard analogy is a strong point, and I think we can finish there so people would remember this analogy stronger.
Yeah.
Well, this topic, we can talk about it for hours. I know you can, but since we have a relatively short amount of time, I think this was a good summary. So first of all, I'd like to thank you a lot. But before we finish, I want to ask you if there is anything else that you would like to add or say or comment.
I mean, I can say a lot of stuff, but one other thing to remind: always remember what to focus on. Because if you are aware of what you are focusing on with your life purpose, I'm sure anybody can be as productive as they can be, and they can be in the flow. not in anxiety, not in boredom, not in depression, but being in the flow. I would suggest anyone to understand and read about flow theory. On the surface, it has nothing to do with time management, but it is the core of it, I would say. And back until about 2005, 2006, I talked a lot about time management in my trainings, but I do not talk about time management because time cannot be managed. Okay, time cannot be managed. Only the emotions can be managed in that time. So if you change the emotion of the task you have in your hand, then you can achieve anything. If you cannot change a task in your hand, then you can be very unproductive. So try to analyze, try to understand the emotion. So in order to understand that emotion, of course, the person needs to know themselves. So that is the most oldest rhetoric, that most oldest lesson on earth. Are we really knowing ourselves? If we know ourselves, we can be very productive. Otherwise, we can be just, not going with the flow, but how do you say, dribbling where we are.
Yeah, just revolving around.
Exactly.
At the same time.
And
I
I'm
think
thinking
it all starts,
nobody is understanding us.
and neither we understanding ourselves. I think, yeah, it all starts with awareness. That's a very strong point as well. Well, thank you very much, Kemal. It's a pleasure and honor to have you here. And this was a short but a very rich conversation. And I know we will have a lot of chats together in the future as well. But for now, I'd love to thank you. And I'm sure it has been it will be very insightful for the viewers. It has been very insightful for me. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great program, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.